that's where this tool can be helpful to just give us data, keep us accountable, but also gives us better specific metrics for people. And that's how we can inform our strength and conditioning. So for my riders with my rehab programming, like that is super helpful to see like where we're at from a soft tissue standpoint, from a recovery standpoint, from a symmetry standpoint. But then I'm also using it to track my athletes from my strength and conditioning work to make sure that we are making the gains that we need to be making in the gym to help support the body in the saddle.
Welcome to Elevate Your Ride, the podcast dedicated to elevating your performance in the saddle. I'm Ellie, your personal trainer.
And I'm Lauren, your mindset coach.
I am sitting here with Dr. Michelle Correia, and we just did a strength assessment for equestrians to test muscular strength to get hard data instead of subjective data, which is what we typically use as coaches. And we're going to talk to you guys about that and maybe some other things. We'll see what sort of tangents we go on.
We see where it takes us.
So I had Michelle on the podcast like over a year ago I think so. Yeah. Last year.
Yeah,
sometime last year. So Michelle is a physical therapist for equestrians and for horses as well. And she is also my personal physical therapist. Highly recommend for anybody up in the Northwest, or you also go to Florida.
I do go to Florida. I go to Florida a couple times a year.
Yeah. So recommend Michelle for anybody who has some pain, some muscle imbalances, anybody who wants injury prevention, all the things. So first off, why did you want to do the strength assessment in the first place?
Yeah, so the strength assessment for the equestrians is kind of it's a newer tool that can be used. So we're using a strength dynamometer, which the dynamometer is a tool that you can use, and it's used in high performance sports for traditional athletes. Basically, the goal being that if you go into a medical provider, typically physical therapists are doing some sort of strength assessment, conditioning coaches and strength coaches can do that as well. But if you are a traditional athlete in football, soccer, baseball, you can go into a clinic and they will strength test you to see if your strength is appropriate for the time of the season that it is, for your level of sport, and they can compare it to data from that specific type of sport, which is amazing. So I like to use the football example because most people understand football to a degree. So like if I have a high school quarterback that's trying to go to a D1 college, you could get strength measurements for what that athlete's quad strength is, what their hamstring strength is, what their hip flexor strength is. And you can compare it to what the D1 football player like goal would be on what their strength is. So you can see how off they are at a certain time in the season. So if they're prepping for going to do part of their season or they're ending their season, their strength should actually look a little bit different. And so the goal with my business was to be able to bring some high quality sports medicine, physical therapy to horse and rider. Being able to do this type of testing was always a goal of mine because I want to elevate this sport and help be able to bring this type of data to my clients. So there's a couple of clinicians that are utilizing this in the US to start being able to build more knowledge around what the strength demands are. But even if we're looking at at that football example, the way that strength training and strength and conditioning is developed for traditional sports is we actually reverse engineer based off of this data. So if you have the data of what hamstring strength, quad strength, hip flexor strength is for that D1 football player, and you're trying to get your collegiate athlete there or your high school athlete there, you can actually reverse engineer how you need to get their strength program. We need to know what it needs to look like to get them there. And so that is actually how a lot of strength and conditioning has developed for traditional sports is we've looked at these values to say, okay, not me specifically, smart strength coaches who've done this over decades. But now that's how the standard is like being able to have a strength-based program that's based on what the goals are, based on the demands of the sport and the strength measurements that we get. We don't really have a data pool for that for equestrians. We don't have it for equestrians in general. We don't have it discipline specific. So what I'm doing is kind of getting an idea of my client base, where their strength is at throughout the season and what it looks like for different disciplines. And so the goal being that we can have better knowledge on what strength programming should be so we can apply it to riders so they're stronger.
How many barns have you done this assessment with so far?
I've done for full barns. Have done I've probably done 10 of them. I have been using this equipment on an individual basis and have been like slowly branching out to doing it in a larger scale, just from like a feasibility standpoint, right? And so my goal is to be able to have these performance assessments that barns can utilize, where I come out, we can do strength assessment with the strength tools. We can get some plyometric or some cardio measurements to see where athletes are at. And then the trainers and the overseeing barn management team now gets this really good idea of what their overall barn program needs. So if you have some riders that maybe are at a higher risk for injury, then we can really hone in on that and make sure that they get the support they need. So we can fully support the athlete from a full perspective. Because yes, the rider is going to impact the horse, and the stronger and more fit the rider can be, the less likely we're going to have to be injured, but also the less likely your horse is going to be injured as well.
That's something that you could talk about is so you see horses and people. And how often do you see the rider's issues or compensations affecting the horse?
Every single day.
Okay. So
Every single day.
I hope that you guys heard that because you should get fit not only for yourself, not only for competition, but for your horse.
And that's such an interesting part to like my business. I have my doctorate in PT for humans, but then I have my equine certification for certified equine rehabilitation. It's through a program at University of Tennessee. So I'm a horse and human rehab specialist. The cool thing about that is that my business really started to grow when I had the ability to do horses, which was interesting to me because I had all this data and knowledge and support for the riders, but the riders weren't really interested unless it involved their horse. And so that to me was really eye-opening. It was like, okay, I knew, and I'm a rider myself, like I knew that like we want to put our horses first. And I would love to see the industry change to where we're prioritizing both equally because we are a partnership. I think people put the finances and their priority is on their horse, which is a good thing, but it also shouldn't be at the detriment of your own body. And so it was an interesting thing that like I see it every single day that if you have a horse that's hard to get off your right leg, is it a you thing or is it a horse thing? And if it's been the horse you've been riding for a while, it's probably a both thing.
Both, yes.
Yeah. And so at some point, yeah, your horse, you might be telling your trainer, like, your horse just won't get off that right seat bone, or they just won't yield that right leg, or they won't listen to your right spur. At some point, it also comes back to you as the rider. And I know that's a little tough love, but it's also your body and the way that your mechanics are going to greatly impact the way that your horses move. And your horse impacts you too. So if you have a horse that is actually sticky on the right rib, it's going to impact the way your leg moves. So you still need support for it.
100%. So let's go back to the strength assessment. So what different disciplines have you been looking at?
So I've looked at hunter jumpers. I've looked at eventers. I've looked at dressage. I've looked at Western pleasure. I think those are I really want to get some reiners. My next goal is to get some really solid, like a really solid reining group. So that's my next, if you're in the Portland metro.
I was going to say, you should reach out to JR.
I've been trying to get out there, which is, he's a busy man.
Yeah.
So, but that's on my list.
Okay. So what are the trends that you've noticed across the board for equestrians?
Mm-hmm.
And then what are the trends that you've noticed discipline specific?
Good question. So this is still like early data points, right? But it's been interesting. And this goes from like the full barns that I've seen, but also the individual riders that I work with as well. Across the board, and I think we spoke about this on my first episode, but the lateral chain strength is not great for riders because we're never moving laterally. And I think the first initial thing that a lot of people think about is like, well, if we aren't having to do that movement in saddle, then why would I train it? But if you're not balancing your hip strength and full body strength, if you have an area of weakness and you're just allowing your body to only move in that one specific plane or that one specific way of moving, then you're going to put yourself up at a higher injury risk. And so that's why having lateral chain strengthening in general is helpful for riders because we never train laterally. We never really move side to side. Our horses do, we don't. And so to be able to make sure that our bodies are fully strong to the way that we need them to be for in saddle and out of saddle, the lateral chain has always been it's been a high horse, pun intended, that I wanted to really dive into that, especially when we got metrics for it. So that is consistent across the board that that's something that riders struggle with. And I think that makes sense. So I expected that. Today we talked about hamstring weakness, which is something that I'm finding a little bit more notable in the Western riders compared to some of the English riders. And you and I were chatting earlier, potentially that's based on maybe hip or like the amount of hip rotation or even the amount of like heel drive that you have when you ride. Um, I
Because and to clarify,
yeah.
so a lot of us Western riders, we actually, I feel like, are working to keep our legs fairly soft on the
Mhm.
horse and then using a lot of hip. At least that's the way that our barn is riding and trending towards at the moment.
Yeah.
So using hips to pull the leg up and connecting down to the horse through our hips. And I just feel like the Western disciplines are trending towards having lighter leg connection and stronger seat connection, which is, I'm curious if that is why our barn in specific
Mhm.
is having hamstring weakness,
Yeah.
or is it because I've focused so much on glute med strength
Yeah.
with everybody in the barn
Right.
that I've neglected hamstring strength? We're gonna find out.
We're gonna dive into hamstring strengthening for the next season for your team.
Yes.
So, but
Yes.
I think that is something notable from your group was that
Mhm.
the lateral chain strength was not to the level that I typically see. We
Mhm.
actually had most riders having like everybody's going to have a little bit of asymmetry, like a preference side or a better side where they're a little bit stronger. We typically want to keep that symmetry to about 10% or less of an, or okay, how do I say that? We want that asymmetry to be 10% or less typically. But for most of your team here, that was true. So
Mhm.
that not only was the strength pretty decent, but the asymmetry was pretty minimal, which is great. And that's something that I haven't seen very frequently. So you guys should be very proud of that.
And again, I wonder if that is somewhat discipline
Mhm.
specific because I wonder if we care more about our asymmetries in the Western all around disciplines
Mhm.
than the English disciplines.
Well, I mean, I
I
think about
don't
those
know.
dressage riders. Those
Well, but
dressage riders are super particular, right?
exactly. So like I would consider what we do actually fairly
Yeah.
similar
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
dressage. Like we care about inches and centimeters. And I feel
Mhm.
like that is not the jumpers specifically are not as particular about.
Yeah.
I don't know, I could be wrong because I don't jump, so maybe I don't
So
know.
my experience as an eventer, like we have some show jumping, right, in there, but working with a lot of the show jumpers that I've worked with, like, they're still talking I think of them as, like, the barrel racers to
Mhm,
a degree, right? Like,
mhm.
they're going
Yep,
for the seconds of time,
yes.
and if their body and momentum can get them to help out through a turn, they're gonna use their body that way. They're
Right,
not worried about staying as symmetrical in the saddle,
right,
and I don't necessarily want those riders to be thinking as, like, "Okay, how do I keep this turn nice and balanced?" They are
right,
trying to get through the turn as fast as possible, which is
right.
the job. Same with barrel racers. That
Yep,
is the job. Get out, do the turn. Obviously, we want it to be all the other additional things that you're doing outside in the ring to be that you're training outside of the show ring to be supporting so that you can do that. But they're not necessarily in the ring focused on that. Whereas you guys are in the ring, similar to dressage,
yes.
focused on keeping that balance and position because you're being scored on.
Right, like, it doesn't matter if your horse's shoulder pops out to the
Yeah.
right a little bit as long as
Mhm.
you can make it work, and if it makes your horse better, then by all
Right.
means do it. For
Yeah.
us, that matters. So, I'm curious on that, if that is maybe why our group is less asymmetrical,
Mhm.
or again, is it because of the programming?
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know, or maybe
interesting.
both.
I'll have to look at my numbers from my dressage crew that I've measured because
Mhm,
the interesting thing about this is like it's such a rabbit hole of these measurements is like as we start to get baseline data, like right now I'm doing winter measurements and my goal is to be able to do measurements through different times in the season and that seasonality is going to change depending on the discipline.
mhm,
So this is what winter looks like for your discipline. That's what
mhm,
winter's gonna look for my eventers that I've measured. It's what winter's gonna look like for my dressage riders. But then how does that fluctuate within the season? So my Florida riders, they're gonna have a different strength in the winter than my West Coast riders.
mhm,
And so it's just getting the data points to see like where the heck are our strength measures and where are the riders the strongest? Are they the strongest at the very beginning of the season? And then they get weaker because they don't have as much time to strength train. They're doing more shows. but then they get tired by the end of the season and that's when they're feeling more fatigued? Or does it go the opposite way? They build strength. So it'll be really interesting to see how it
It
evolves.
Yeah, yeah. So are you using this data in your program, like, using the data to help your programming with your clients at the moment, and how is that
Yeah.
going?
So when in traditional med and like when I am treating a client that has a hamstring injury, if they have a shoulder rotator cuff injury, that's where I started to use this tool work more regularly. So I wasn't
Mhm,
necessarily doing the full strength screens. I was using the tool to see where is your shoulder strength on your right compared to your left? Where is your internal versus external rotation? Where do we start with the beginnings of where we're recovering? So obviously, if you're post op, we're not doing it early on. But if you have an injury, we want to see, okay, where is your strength when it's appropriate to test? And let's get not just me manually resisting you, let's get actual numbers behind it.
mhm,
How much is that difference? And what do we need to work towards? So, from a rehab standpoint, I use it pretty frequently from
mhm.
that perspective, so that I'm making sure that the things that we're doing are making this soft tissue change. And it informs how I practice from a rehab standpoint. Because if I'm having a rider do a hamstring heavy program and a hamstring is not necessarily responding the way we need it to, or maybe the person is feeling it more in their glutes, or maybe they're not necessarily progressing in that strength, then we got to dive into why that is. And so it gives us timelines and makes sure that, okay, we're on track, or maybe we do need a little bit more time before we go into the saddle if we're recovering from an injury that keeps us out of the saddle. I really like it for post-op clients because it makes sure that we are not just going and returning people to full capacity of sport because of a timeline, but actually because of science. So while we all want to be back in the saddle as soon as possible, there are definitely metrics that are not appropriate to have people back in the saddle, and it would be unsafe from a soft tissue standpoint to do that, or we could be risking bigger injuries. And so it helps give me data, but it also helps the client too, because then they can see, oh, I'm very, very weak on this side. And now they're going to understand it more so than like me looking like the bad guy or the person keeping them out of the attack. It gives us to be like, hey, we got to get you to here. And it's going to help motivate them too to be like, oh, I know that my numbers are here. I know she's testing me in the next month. We got to make sure those numbers are good, which
I
is helpful.
I mean, I totally agree that I think that people are gonna hold themselves more accountable
Hmm.
to a number
Yes.
than from, like, a feeling from a
Yes.
coach. Yes.
And so for people that haven't had strength testing before, typically if you're going to a traditional physical therapy practice that doesn't have the dynamometer tools, typically they'll do some sort of grip testing, but there's typically manual resistance testing, which is done, and that's done to basically make sure that your muscle strength is good, that your like nervous system is responding the way that it's appropriate to do. So there's a couple different ways we do it, but each clinician is going to have a little bit of a different feel for what they are looking for. So when I'm manual resisting someone, but if my colleague is my other PT in the clinic, if they see my patient and they strength test them, and maybe that PT was a football player, maybe they were that football player that got injured, um, they're going to have a definite difference to strength measurements just because of how much power they have themselves. And so that's where this tool can be helpful to just give us data, keep us accountable, but also gives us better specific metrics for
Mhm.
people. And that's how we can inform our strength and conditioning. So for my riders with my rehab programming, like that is super helpful to see like where we're at from a soft tissue standpoint, from a recovery standpoint, from a symmetry standpoint. But then I'm also using it to track my athletes from my strength and conditioning work to make sure that we are making the gains that we need to be making in the gym to help support the body in the saddle.
Very well said. Yes. It's important to be strong.
It is important to be
It's
strong.
very important to be strong.
And now we're going to get some data on your program, which is cool.
Mhm, mhm, which I'm excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Hi, everyone. It's your personal trainer, Ellie. If you're looking to become a stronger, more balanced, and flexible rider, I'm here to help. I offer virtual personal training sessions and customized workout plans that you can complete on your own. As a fellow competitor, I understand the physical demands riding requires, and my goal is to help you perform your best for your horse, whether you're preparing for a show or just want to improve your everyday rides. Visit lopindowntherailfitness.com or click on my website tab in the notes of this podcast episode to learn more. Let's work together to elevate your ride.
Are you looking for that extra competitive edge, struggling with show pin anxiety, or looking to set and achieve meaningful goals with your horse? Schedule a session with me, Lauren, your dedicated mindset coach. As an experienced competitor, I understand the mental demands required to excel at the highest level, and am here to support you in building a plan to help you stay accountable and reaching those goals. For more information, check out laurencervelli.com or click on the website link in our show notes. Let's work together to elevate your ride.
So I want to take a little bit of like a left turn.
I'm good with left turns.
Guys. So something that I have noticed is when a client comes to me and let's say that they have like a glute med weakness, super, super common, right? I think that weaknesses come from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So earlier tonight when we were strength assessing one of the youth kids, she was like, I don't know, it hurts, but there's like no reason why it hurt. And we all just kind of looked at her and we are like, no reason
No
why
reason
it
at
hurts
all.
I think that our weaknesses and our pain comes from somewhere. And I think that a lot of it comes from our daily lives.
Oh, yeah.
So if somebody comes to you and you assess and see that they're having glute med weakness or hamstring weakness or something, are you assessing to see if that issue is coming from their daily life? And are you making any recommendations to change that habit or that weakness in their daily life as well?
So that's such a good rabbit hole because it is such a gray area. Okay. If I have someone that comes into the clinic and they have a general area of weakness or soreness, my goal as a PT is to figure out what's the tissue that's impacted, how did it happen? And a lot of times, for a lot of people that have ongoing pain, there's not like one specific thing that caused it. And so for that client that has had ongoing hip pain for decade and they don't know what happens, why it happens, I want to dive into when does it bother you? Most of the time, everyone's like, all the time it bothers me. I don't know. I don't know the last time I didn't have pain. So figuring out and getting the data points from the clients, and that might take a few sessions for us to kind of tease through. But my goal is to say, okay, where is the soft tissue or the actual bony, is there a bony issue? Is there a nerve issue? That's my role as the PT is to figure out what the impact is of the tissue, like what we're dealing with, but also how does it affect the whole system? And where did it come from in the first place? Because if I just help your hip feel better because you're coming in to see physical therapy 3 times a week for 6 weeks, and you feel better because you're moving for 3 times a week for 6 weeks, and then I kick you out because you're doing so well. If the hip pain comes back, I didn't really do my job, right? That means that we didn't really get down to the root. And that's, there's a whole discussion around the health system and the medical system and access to healthcare and all of that. But my goal is always to figure out why it's happening and if we can get to the root cause of it. And if we need to make some adjustments, like changing the way that someone is sitting in the car, that's a really common one. Changing the way that people are sitting at their desk at work, being able to change positions throughout the day. And, I'm, especially for riders, especially for the equestrian athlete, that a lot of trainers, they are not necessarily always seeing healthcare providers and they tend to have pain that's been going on for a long period of time. I'm not going to change the fact that they lift hay in a really weird way and they do it all the time. They do it every day and maybe they don't feel great when they lift hay, but they still need to do it. Like my job is not necessarily to say you're never going to pick up hay again. It's going to be, can we modify that so that it makes a little bit more sense for your body? Or if we can't, because there are also people that won't do that, but also ways that we can't modify a movement, then we have to be able to make your body be able to tolerate it better. And so if there are specific movements that we can narrow down in daily life outside of sport, I want to dive into that with the client for sure and be able to make adjustments so that they can have better movement quality. I have an odd population, not an odd population, but an unexpected population of clients that are veterinarians because I work as a rehab specialist for horses. And so I actually get quite a few veterinarians that work alongside me because all of a sudden they start telling me about their shoulder and their neck and their back that's been hurting for a while. And while I do talk to veterinarians about ergonomics and their own positioning and what would be helpful for them to help reduce injury risk, there are some weird positions that vets have to get into, like dentals, or like if you're flexing your large draft versus your like tiny little miniature puppy. There's a lot of variation in the height that they have to do, like their deadlifts and their squats in. And so there are just some positions for them that I will be like, that's not going to feel great on your body. But
To mention it has to be a position that they can quickly get
yeah,
out of
they have
to
to be able to
get
get
out
out
of
of
the
it.
way.
So like, yeah, you
Yeah.
can't ergonomic your way out of a flexion for most. You can like set it up for this specific horse, but your next one might try to kick you.
Yeah.
And you might not be able to, like, they might put more weight in it. So when I talk to vets, like my goal is not necessarily to have them be out of awkward positions or positions that I don't love, but it's to make sure that their body can tolerate it, which is typically going to make them working on strength outside of their specific work
Mhm.
so that they can be stronger to tolerate that. Because the stronger that your body can be at baseline, the better you are tolerating weird positions and like weird demanding things. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I need to start strength testing all my vets.
That
That's
would be interesting. That would be
Yeah.
interesting because I bet they're very strong in some places and very weak in
Yep.
other places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's great that they're coming to you because, like you said, a lot of
They end up meeting me. Yeah.
yeah, and vets are a common group of people who tend to lack in the personal health
Yeah.
care area. So, like equestrians in general, but especially our veterinarians because they're spending so much time working on our crazy horses. They don't
Yeah.
have time to work on themselves.
And especially for those equine vets, right? Like we know those numbers are dwindling. And so they to me, if they come to me with any questions, I'm like, how can I help you? Please. Because we know their numbers are dwindling. I want them to be sound in their own bodies. And it's fascinating to me, some of those conversations with veterinarians where I'm like, I'll ask them about how their own soundness is.
Mhm.
And they're like, oh, I don't think I want to know about my body. I'm like, well, don't you want to like be able to flex horses for decades to come? The better that you feel in your body, the longer you can do it. So that's a tangent about vet, but I don't know if I answered the question.
You did. So basically, as I evolved through my training program, I care more and more about the positions that my clients are putting themselves in
Yeah.
their daily life.
Yeah.
So it drives me nuts when I have a client come to me and say something like, I want to fix my posture. And I say, okay, we're going to work on opening up your chest. We're going to work on strengthening your upper back. And when I was a younger personal trainer, I would program them through the exercises and then be frustrated when those programmed exercises were not generating the results that the clients and I were wanting to see, right? And then I started evolving and started paying more attention to, okay, how are they holding their body position in between exercises? Or if I asked them to go grab a piece of equipment, what abnormalities are their bodies conforming to as I watch them move around? And I think that is one challenge of the virtual training because I see most of my clients over a video call instead of in person. And so that can make that piece more challenging is if somebody's moving off camera to go grab a piece of equipment, then I do use watching how people move through their daily life as just as much as I watch them do the actual exercise, right? And I noticed that if I ask them to do all these postural correctness exercises and then they go to pick up the dumbbell with horrible posture, then I'm like, okay, well, that's undoing all of the work that we just did, right? And that's why your posture is not improving. So something that I have found is the more that I try to correct and make people aware of the positions that they're putting their bodies in their daily lives, the less pain they're having, the more results they're having, that sort of stuff. So I just was curious if that is something that you have noticed and something that you pay attention to as well.
Yeah. And I find that mostly because I work with clients in saddle and out of saddle. Because my goal, a lot of times with riders, when I'm working with them on their position in saddle, they're like, well, if I could just get my leg to respond the way I want it to, or if I could just stop my shoulder from coming up, happy to help you do that in saddle. But then that's also why I do an off horse assessment. And we talk about what positions do you find that you're still doing the same thing in real life?
Okay,
Right?
so something that I say all the time, and I usually say it first session, the things that you struggle with in the saddle are going to be the things that you struggle with in the gym and in your daily life.
Yes.
It's all
Yeah,
synonymous.
it's all the same.
It's all the same, you know?
It's the same body.
It's the
just,
same
yeah.
body. Like, I love when somebody comes to me and is like, well, I do this thing, but it only happens when I ride.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, potentially correct, but doubtful.
Yeah.
Like you're
It's probably
probably
not as impactful. You've just heard about it from a trainer. No one else is yelling at you about the way you go up and down stairs.
like your boss isn't yelling at
Yeah,
you for how you're sitting at your computer,
exactly.
So that I find really interesting is that one, a lot of people don't realize that either the issues that they're having in the saddle are translating or following them in their daily life, or
Mhm.
the opposite, that their issues in their daily life are happening to them in the saddle. And that's
Yeah.
why, as what we do in our
Mhm.
profession, we can help riders correct the issues that they're having in the saddle by not training in the
Right.
saddle.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, Elevate Your Ride fans. Are you loving our show and looking for a way to show your support? Check out our line of Elevate Your Ride merchandise. From stylish t-shirts to cozy hoodies to journals and hats. We have everything you need to represent your favorite podcast. Ready to gear up? Click on the Buy Our Merchandise Here link in the podcast notes, or head on over to our website, elevateyourride.co, and click on the Store tab. Thank you for your support. Make sure to like, follow, and share our platform with your friends.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for tuning in to Elevate Your Ride. We're so excited to continue helping you elevate your performance in the saddle. To keep bringing you quality content and information, we're asking you to help us. Tell your friends about us on our podcast, like and share a meaningful quote you saw on our social media, write us a review on Spotify or Facebook. You can also join our Facebook group and ask all your health and fitness questions, or maybe post a success story to motivate another amateur. Your engagement really helps us support and encourage the equestrian community. We're also inviting sponsors and supporters to help us build our show. As a sponsor, starting at just $150, you'll receive marketing on our podcast, website, and growing social media platforms for your business. It's the perfect way to connect with the equestrian community and showcase your brand to our dedicated listeners. And for our supporters, your $50 contribution gets you a shout out on our social media and website. Every bit of support really helps fuel the show and helps us inspire and motivate equestrians. So, if you're interested in learning more about that, you can scroll down to the show notes of this episode and look for the Become a Supporter or Become a Sponsor links and click on those to get some more information. Thank you for listening. We can't wait to continue expanding our platform and helping you elevate your ride.
It's interesting. And I think, when it comes to posture too, posture is such a big thing because I think a lot of people want to correct that and improve their overall posture. And there was such interesting research that came out because it used to be, I don't know, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, having that really like upright shoulders back, like that upright position was such a common theme that sports medicine from physicians all the way down through like massage therapy
Mhm.
was everyone was talking about making sure that that positioning was optimal. And what research has found now, because we've had people focused on that like upright, really shoulders back posture all the time, now we have data with that where that isn't necessarily comfortable for people to do all the time either. And so it's good to, I think about like the training you're kind of talking about when you're stabilizing someone or having them kind of open up their posture in their chest. It is such a good, valuable thing to be having your body outside of its normal posture. And that has been the most valuable thing for most people. It's not that you need to be out of the posture 110% of the time. It's just that you're getting posture variability.
Mhm.
So the most uncomfortable thing is staying in one posture for most people.
Correct.
If you are
Yes.
upright in the perfect, what we would think of as perfect posture, if you're in that position for all of your day, it's still not gonna feel good,
Mhm.
versus if you're slouched all of your day, it's not gonna feel good. So, the best research now is showing that people stay out of pain in the best way with positional changes that are frequent. So, I will chart notes as a PT in not a great postural position. I'll sit on the couch and I'll slouch and I'll type my notes on my computer and probably look like a little shrimp. But I will do that for a short period of time, and then I will change positions, and I'll go lay on my stomach and type on my computer there, or I'll go stand at my desk. So I try to change positions so that I'm not stuck in one place, and that's been the most consistent thing. So for your clients that are seeing you on the Zoom and the video, like they're going to have that period of time where they're finally getting out of that posture, which is
Mhm.
so valuable. And having that opportunity to open up their chest and be able to
Mhm.
stand up more upright and having that time period where they're getting into a different position
Mhm.
is so valuable. And the challenge is like what's the rest of their day look like?
Mhm.
Is it them going back into that position that is normally really aggravating if they're in it for 8 hours?
Mhm. So something that I have also implemented in the past, I would say maybe 2 or 3 years I started
Hmm.
doing this, is I give my clients office workouts.
Ooh,
And
yes.
they have a list of exercises that they are supposed to do every day at work, and I don't care what order they do them. I don't care if they do them all at the same time, but the point is to get them out of the posture
Yeah.
that they're sitting in
Yeah.
on their computer
Yeah.
and ask them, "Okay, can you do a chest stretch for 30 seconds and then go right back to work?" And then a couple minutes later, "Can you do a couple R circles and then go right back to work?" Then a couple minutes later, "Can you stand up and do a couple squats and then go back to work?" And I find that, 1, people are in less daily pain, they're
Mhm.
less stiff, and it makes their body crave
Yeah.
exercise more. The more that you can teach your body to crave exercise, the
Better
better
it is.
overall. Yeah.
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 Once you can let your brain figure out that movement is the thing that helps it, because I think there's a
Mhm.
lot of resistance and a barrier to it, that it's like, oh, it's a whole thing. And if I do it, I have to spend an hour doing all the exercises. Like it can be little exercise snacks to where you just have a little bit of motion and you can
Mhm.
do it a little bit through your day and you just chip away at it and it
Yep.
can really make a difference.
Mhm. Mhm. Now, not saying that it's gonna help you lose weight or anything like that. I mean, ultimately, yes, but it's gonna help you feel better and
Mhm.
move better, and those are the things that we're chasing,
Oh,
longevity.
longevity.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
How much do you talk about longevity or focus on longevity in your work?
I mean, that's always the goal, right? Is to talk about like
Right.
being able to be overall wellness, overall health.
Mhm.
My biggest thing when it comes to longevity, especially for riders, is how long they can stay in the saddle.
Mhm.
So if I've got clients in their late 80s
Mhm.
and I've got youth clients. So my goal, even with those riders in their late 80s, we got to make sure we're doing like impact things that are safe and appropriate, but we're trying to take off potentials for osteopenia or fractures.
Yep. So,
Yeah,
lifting weights.
lifting weights is one
Yep.
of the best ways to do that. I know that there's like this huge trend about like having a weighted vest
What's your
when
thought
you
on
walk.
that?
I mean, it's fine.
I love
If it
mine. I
gets
have one.
people, yeah, if it gets people out and walking, that's
Uh-huh.
fine. The majority of strength training is probably gonna be the better part of bone density
Mhm.
improvements, but I if it's something that feels good and makes you have more activity through your day, I'm cool with it. It's not
Mhm.
bad by any means.
Mhm.
I just think that sometimes social media likes to inflate things that could be done in an easier way. So it's like, we don't need to go
It's
buy a
like,
weight
do
vest.
everything except the actual
Yes,
thing.
you can
Yeah.
get a weight vest, but if you have a can of beans at home and you can start doing strength training for your shoulders with your can of beans, you could do that
I've had people
instead.
do that before.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, I'll start working with people and they're like, "I don't have dumbbells." I'm like, "Okay." That there's
Yeah.
so they're like, "I don't have dumbbells, so I can't lift weights." And I'm
Mhm.
like, "No,
There's
no."
plenty of things we
I'm
can
like,
do.
"No, no. We can find things."
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Go
think
go
about
find me your horse show trophies.
yeah.
Yeah.
There's the floor is a great thing,
It
push-ups are
but
great,
okay, people
planks.
I love how people think that bodies don't weigh anything. We can manipulate our body weight to do so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just have to know how to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, people get strong doing yoga for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
because you're and that, like, type of calisthenic or, like, being able to do body weight-based work is hard. I was just chatting with my husband about this recently because planning to be in Florida for a couple weeks for clients, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted my gym situation to be because I
Mm,
did a gym last year, and it was, like, kind of a thing because I was only there for a short period of time, and it was a whole membership thing, and I was trying to figure out what I was gonna do. If I was just gonna grab weights or borrow them from a friend down there, and he was like, "You could just, like, body weight train." And I was like, "You were right, I don't know why." So
cycle train.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So I
yeah.
was like, "I'm just gonna be able to do a lot of ISO-based training, body weight training,
Mhm.
push-up, pull-ups, all the things," which is gonna be fun. So I'm actually doing a little break from my regular strength training to do some of that, which I'm excited about, which is keeping me moving and grooving.
So instead of taking the time off while
Mhm.
Michelle's in Florida,
Yeah.
she's just going to be doing other things. She's going to adapt to her environment
Mm.
and still keep working towards the goals.
And I think that is such a challenging thing for a lot of people, and I don't know of how your client base is, but, the access to activity and strength training for a lot of riders tends to be a barrier in general. It's hard for people to for some people to jump on board with like figuring out when to find time, how to find time, what it looks like. And then when they, have a holiday, like we just had Thanksgiving, we're going to go into Christmas. Around the holidays, it's really hard for a lot of people to maintain their quote unquote schedules. And the thing that will keep you moving and in the gym and keeping your strength is being comfortable with adapting it. That it's not an all or nothing.
Mhm.
If you missed a workout of your 3 that you're going to do this week, that's also fine. You can still do 2. 2 is still better than 0. And so if you're normally doing 3, you can still do 2, it's fine. Or if you couldn't get to the gym because of time constraints or whatever, you can still go for a walk.
Mhm.
You can still walk on your treadmill. You
You
can still do squats at home.
You're describing every conversation I've had with all of my clients this week.
Yeah.
Because as we're heading, just
As
got
we
off
head into
Thanksgiving and heading into December. So what I usually tell my clients is, look, I rarely ever change programming between mid-November to the end of the year.
Yeah.
And part of that is because I'm not going to change a routine that you're not going to stick to.
Yep.
And I think that yes, committing to the actual exercise is important, but committing to a routine
That's
is
so much more important.
more important. And committing to doing something instead of the actual exercises that you have is overall more important for sticking to exercise long term. Because we're trying to create longevity, trying to teach your body how to crave exercise over a long term. And so I usually tell my clients, give yourself some grace. You can skip one day, you can skip one workout, but you can't skip 2.
Yeah.
And that gives them the opportunity to say, okay, so if I was supposed to work out on Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
they can skip
They
Thanksgiving,
can have their turkey.
but you can't skip Friday.
Yeah.
Or you can't skip Saturday. Like,
Yeah.
you give yourself a little bit of a grace. And I tell people, go lighter weight, do fewer reps, just start the workout and see how far you get. If you only get 5 exercises in, fine. But most of the time, if people start, they're going to finish.
Yeah.
So I tell people to give yourself a little bit of leeway. And so what you were saying, when I first started my business, I had more of an issue of people being less committed to the exercises, less committed to buying equipment, less committed to carving time.
Yeah.
I used to buy into it a little bit more. Now, the older that I get and the more experience that I get, the less I buy into things. I let people I'm kind, but I hold a line. I think that is a shift that I have made with a mindset of how I coach my clients, and
Okay.
I think that is helpful for people. I'll say, like I said, you can skip one workout, but you can't skip 2. So having sympathy, but not letting the sympathy turn into taking advantage, and
Right.
that is
Well, it's hard for the further out you get from your exercise routine, the harder it is to get back into it.
100%. Yeah. So not letting yourself fall off the routine is the most important. So like if I have a lot of clients who travel for work or travel for horse shows, that kind of stuff. And so I'll usually tell them, like, most of my clients have like booty bands as pieces of equipment. I'm like, you don't need to take your whole dumbbell, foam roller, everything, but just take your
take your
booty
small
bands
stuff,
with
yeah.
you. Take your small stuff, or even just do body weight stuff, like what you're going to do with Florida.
Yeah.
Like even when you're traveling and even with when you're getting thrown off your routine, trying to stick to something is super, super important.
Because then when you don't carve out the time, and if you lose carving out that time, it's so much harder to get it back in routine. And it is, I think most people who have had some semblance of an exercise program, like, I've felt that, where it's like, oh, I have not gone to the gym, or I haven't done my exercises, or I haven't done my group classes. And then like the further out you get from your last exercise routine, the harder it is to get back.
It is.
And but I do think it's important to like know that you can fluctuate it. So it's not to be scary if you miss one, but it's also like to make sure that, okay, is this a week where I do need to give myself grace, but also adapt to, this is my goal as my exercises, that maybe if you are doing a normal gym workout, maybe you're doing it at home that week, and that's fine. And maybe you're doing it in between your, I don't know, plans or your family time. Maybe you're doing it in between where you need to go have a little bit of time away from your family, where you need to go do squats or something like that. If you can integrate it in somehow, that can be really helpful.
Thank you for listening to Elevate Your Ride. Find us on Instagram and Facebook, all linked in the podcast notes. We'll see you next time. The information provided by Elevate Your Ride is for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as medical or professional advice. While we discuss health and fitness topics related to equestrians, the content provided through this podcast is not a substitute for professional advice. The views expressed by the host and guests on Elevate Your Ride are their own and should not be taken as professional guidance. We strive to provide accurate and up-to-date information, but we cannot guarantee that the information will be applicable to every individual listener or that it reflects the most current research or guidelines. Before making any changes to your health and fitness routine, we strongly recommend consulting with a qualified professional who can provide personalized advice based on your individual needs and circumstances. Elevate Your Ride and its creators will not be liable for any direct, indirect, consequential, special, exemplary, or other damages arising from the use of information on this podcast. Thank you for listening to Elevate Your Ride. We are committed to providing high-quality content and appreciate your trust in us as a source of information for your health and fitness journey.